This is KVUE News Midday.
Tonight I ordered a targeted military strike on the airfield in Syria from where the chemical attack was launched.
Dozens of U.S. missiles rained down on a Syrian air base, the goal of the retaliatory airstrikes. Plus,
being 131 ayes in 16 days. Senate Bill 1 is finally passed.
And it took 16 hours, but the Texas House approves the state budget. We'll break down last night's debate.
It is a pretty gorgeous Friday, but what can we expect for this weekend and our upcoming work week? I'll let you know in your full forecast.
All right, good morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm Brian Mays. Let's begin with that big news from overseas. A live report this morning on the overnight airstrikes in Syria from ABC News.
Members of Congress will be briefed today on the strike in Syria, many of them asking President Trump, what's next?
Today, new daylight images of the Syrian Air Force base destroyed by a U.S. attack. 59 Tomahawk cruise missiles launched in the cover of darkness from 2 American destroyers in the Mediterranean. President Trump ordering his first major military action.
Tonight I ordered a targeted military strike.
The president's move against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad an about-face. Trump now stepping into the middle of the country's civil war after this week's deadly chemical weapons attack. The Pentagon says the plane that dropped the sarin gas took off from the now bombed base.
Assad choked out the lives of helpless men, women, and children. It was a slow and brutal death.
The wild card, Russia. The Syrian ally called the strikes an act of aggression. The Kremlin getting the heads up from Washington. Those missiles were minutes away from raining down.
At the end of the day, it's going to be tough to argue that the use of chemical weapons against civilians is condoned by anyone. So the president has the moral high ground, man. That's going to have a big impact with Russia.
Also notified early, 24 members of Congress. The bipartisan reaction, many praising Trump, agreeing Assad's actions needed to be dealt with. The disagreement, the fact that the president didn't seek congressional approval.
First, the president was authorized to conduct this strike. Obviously, this is going to be a broader, long-term conflict. It is important that he comes to Congress because we need to pay for it.
And Congress is now asking for President Trump's plan on Syria. The president gave the order from South Florida last night, but we now know Vice President Pence was in the White House Situation Room at the time of the strike. Reporting live at the Capitol, Kenneth Moten, ABC News. Now back to you.
Kenneth, thank you. Oil prices up after the U.S. launched the airstrike against Syria last night. Prices for crude oil jumped 2% in Asia overnight. The growing tension between the United States and Syria means instability for the oil-rich Middle East, which is driving up prices. Some developing news overseas. At least 2 people dead this morning after a truck drove into a crowd on a street in Stockholm, Sweden earlier today. Several more people were hurt. The Prime Minister saying 1 person has been arrested. That until they get any new information, they're investigating this as a terror attack. We'll bring you the very latest information as we get it on this investigation. And developing here in Austin. After investigating for hours, police say the death of a man whose body was found near a South Austin creek is not suspicious. APD believes the man is in his 20s. We'll, of course, have more on this story today on the news at 5. Overnight, after 16 hours of debate, Texas lawmakers have passed a budget. The Senate approved the budget 2 days ago, handed it to the House, and before 2 a.m., just before 2 a.m., after going through nearly 400 amendments, the House signed off on the $218 billion budget. KVUE's Corey Coffin looks at what's in and what's out.
One of the big items cut from the budget, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick's push for school choice. House members essentially killed Senate Bill 3 when they passed an amendment preventing state money going to a voucher system. Child welfare advocates, meanwhile, saw a win with even more funding to foster care and child protective services. About $43 million extra dollars will be allocated for CPS, but they'll have to share that with Medicaid therapy services. The House voted to strip the money from the governor's Texas Enterprise Fund. And something very interesting that happened during the final moments of debate. A deal was struck. Representative Valerie Swanson presented an amendment similar to the Senate's bathroom bill that would prohibit transgender Texans from using the restrooms of their choice in certain circumstances. Now, she agreed to remove that amendment in exchange for a vote to remove state funding from groups that provide abortions, like Planned Parenthood, for example. That last-minute vote passed 101 to 43, so the amendment did pass. This session, several other amendments were also presented to allocate more funding to fight sex crimes.
We've been at this for about 15 hours, going on 16. And I want you to know that about 21 women have been raped in these last 16 hours. In this state, every 46 minutes, a woman, a young woman, gets raped.
Amendments included funding for programs that require statewide reporting of sex crimes at universities, as well as more resources allocated to DPS. The House also approved an amendment to use $2.5 billion from the state's rainy day fund to help, since lawmakers have less to work with this year. Now, just 2 days ago, the Senate passed their version of the budget, hoping to use $106.8 billion of the state's revenue, but they did not want to dip into the rainy day fund. Now, the debate could have lasted even further into the morning hours had several other amendments not been cut off and instead added to the wish list. The budget now goes to a conference committee where members of the House and Senate will have to negotiate to a final version. We're here in the newsroom. I'm Corey Coffin reporting for KVUE News. Guys, back to you.
Corey, thanks a lot. We're just learning via the Associated Press that Neil Gorsuch has been confirmed as a Supreme Court justice by the United States Senate. We're going to have more on that story coming up in just a few minutes right here on Midday. Talking about our weather now, a nice look outside at downtown Austin as we begin a weekend that's going to be a lot less stormy than last weekend. Let's get a look at our forecast now with Erica Lopez. Less stormy. Is that the right way to say that, Erica?
Yeah, perfectly. Less stormy out there. And the good news is that Friday, we're warming up so nicely. Take a look at your current temperatures right now. In the lower 70s, some upper 60s still, mainly for the hill country. 65 in Mason, Fredericksburg at 67, Austin at 73. Now, dew points are dry because of the lack of humidity out there. That's going to allow our temperatures to actually make it into the 80s this afternoon. 72 at ABIA and 73 at Camp Mabry. Here's what we're planning for the rest of our afternoon. Mostly clear skies, and there you go, getting close to 80 degrees. If we don't make it to 80 degrees this afternoon, definitely just about a degree under that. But today the humidity will be low. That's not going to be the case for this weekend. 81 this afternoon. Southeast winds will cause a mostly clear evening, but that's going to bring in some cloud coverage for this weekend. The good news, you don't have to worry about storms or rain shower activity this weekend. It's just the increased humidity. Could have some patchy drizzle actually Sunday morning, and then we're tracking a very decent amount of rain shower chances, possibly some storms for Monday. So I'm going to talk about that in the full forecast, let you know about the storms that will be heading into our region. Brian, back to you.
Erica, thanks a lot. An unusual sight during rush hour, a plane being towed down a busy access road. How it ended up on the highway in the first place. And a Texas teen behind bars this midday after stealing an ambulance. New video of the police chase leading to the arrest. That story straight ahead. Stay with us.